Yes, I can see that.
So nobody wants to see me now. They should just look that.
Speaking of Spencer, speaking of your happy place, we are live. We are connected. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
Well,
Hello.
Yeah, I'm putting it on.
Great.
oh, I see Deborah's on. Oh, good.
So thank you guys all for joining us. Spencer's video just isn't working, but I'm going to let him introduce this whole concept.
As long as you can.
Yep. Hi, Sherry. Hi, John.
Hi, Spencer.
I don't know who's here and who isn't, but I'd like to say hello to everybody and welcome to the first edition of the Penobscot Arts and Letters. And I am, some of you know, Spencer Smith, and my publishing company, Sea Point Books, is right across the street from the library in Brooklyn, which leads me to thank Margaret Thomas of the Friend Memorial Library for letting us use her internet facilities and generally being, as she is, kind and supportive. And to Lynn Curran Sargent for agreeing to be our first guest. That's not our first victim, that's our first guest.
First guinea pig. Let's put it that way.
Guinea pig. But last month we had a beta version of this event in the library, and I talked about Sea Point Books and how it had morphed over time and its challenges and pleasures. And it was a kind of chaotic presentation. I was holding big printouts of big books, and they fell on the floor, and I wandered off the subject. People asked odd questions, and so I thought, this is good. This is what I want to have happen. And I thought it was a success. People walked away smiling. But to back up a little bit, the Arts and Letters is mostly dreamed up by Hanna, Persson, and me. And we thought, among our semi-reclusive friends, they would like to get together like once a month to gossip about stuff, about what their work is, what their hopes are, what their arts are. And now that we are even more isolated due to the pandemic, it seemed even more important. And I also, more than meeting with my friends, I wanted to find a landing place for some of the young people who have come to this area to escape the pandemic. I find it hard to imagine what it would be like to have my career and my hometown yanked out from under me at this point in my career, just when things were starting to get rolling. And further, even beyond that, it would be great if we could convince some of these young people that you really can make a living out here in the woods and by the sea. And if they decided to stay here, how great would that be?
That would be great.
Wouldn't that be great? It'd be
Yes.
the best possible outcome of all this. But mostly, really, I want to have a good time with like-minded people. And this could be a village pub until we get our village pubs back. So now, I'm going to turn it back over to Hanna, who, if you look closely, will look a little smug because she is in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Oh,
I
really?
want a tropical shirt for you guys just to kind of.
You have one of those drinks with like a parasol in it you could show us?
I don't, because I'm actually like living like a hermit even in Florida, because Florida and Maine are handling this whole thing kind of differently.
I imagine so.
But yeah, so I'm just pretty much staying to myself and looking for an RV to set up a boutique in Brooklyn, Maine is kind of what's happening at the moment.
I know. I was telling Hanna just the other day that one of the crew on our boat in the Mediterranean was a young woman from New Jersey, and she was an artist and had no interest in sailing whatsoever. And that was fine because she was a pleasure to be around. And I thought, well, this was nice. And when she left, that was good. She had a good time. She wrote a nice thank you note. And she got back to New Jersey and she bought the biggest RV in sight. And she had her boyfriend rehab it. And she set off across the country in this RV, just cruising around, just like she did on Scarlet and Mediterranean. I thought, that's great.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, it's been, Brooklyn has been a great center to if you're going to be anywhere during this time, Brooklyn's where you want to be. Sedgwick, Blue Hill, it's honestly perfect. And with that note, Lynn, I just want to thank you and say, would you mind just talking a bit about yourself for a second before we get into the Q&A?
There's going to be Q&A as well.
Oh, totally. It's
Oh,
brutal.
geez. No personal questions, please. Well, I'm Lynn. I like to go by Lynn Curran, and I'm a semi-retired teacher. I'm still teaching because of that pandemic. I've been trying to make my living as a potter for the last 2 years. And I opened a random pottery here in Brooklyn as a community pottery. I was giving lots of classes, and I started a group called Pottergenarians for people over 60 who wanted to come and play with clay. And, clay is a great way to bring people together, working with your hands and maybe learning something new and being creative. It's all about being creative. And over my lifetime, clay has brought me together with lots of good people and has always been a form of solace. And it's more or less my therapy as well as my art. I do consider it an art, even though it's really skill-based. There are lots of skills involved. But anyway, I've lived lots of different places. But I consider myself a Mainer. I went to high school in Maine. I went to college in Maine. I've taught school in Maine.
That makes you a Mainer, all right.
I'm a Mainer. My parents are from Maine, and all my ancestors are from Maine and Canada, actually. I always like to say that my father's ancestors arrived in Quebec in 1602. So it was long before the so-called Pilgrims. And my mother's a descendant of the Pilgrims, of the Smiths. So anyway, we've been in this part of the country for a long time. So that's a little bit about me.
Lovely. Yeah. And so when you say it's about, sorry to jump in, but you say it's like therapeutic. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what is it about it that makes it kind of
therapeutic?
Yeah.
Anytime you work with your hands, no matter what it is, if you're knitting or cooking, or anytime you involve your modalities, it's very soothing to your brain. But it allows you an outlet, which is really nice, especially if you're troubled by things, or you've got lots on your mind or anything like that. Isn't that right, Queenie? Isn't that right, Deborah, Queenie, Sherry?
Hi, Lynn. Yes, I wanted to add playing the banjo is therapeutic too, and that uses your hands.
Exactly. Now, I can't play the banjo, but I would certainly love to be able to do something like that. But so making pots is my form of banjo playing.
There are people who say that's the best form of banjo playing, but I'm not one of them.
But anyway, it's gotten me through my life. When I was a kid, I had a pretty rough childhood, and I found a lot of solace in going to the girls' club in Meriden, Connecticut, and learning pottery, learning ceramics, and I haven't stopped. I've always found that to be a very safe place. It's good. It's been very good to me.
Yeah, I was looking at your website actually a bit earlier in the week, and I was just kind of curious, just to jump to the actual work in regards to like your color palette and stuff, what your influences have been.
Wow. Basically, I take a lot of, like as most artists do, take their lead, from nature. I've always liked plants. I took a few courses in college on botany, and I was just really lucky to take botany along with a couple of drawing classes. So I got to spend lots of time in the greenhouses drawing plants and their shapes. And really, I don't know, the lines and the shape and the negative space, it always spoke to me. And the woodlands, I've, being a kid and growing up in the woods, I've always enjoyed woodlands and ferns and things like that. So I guess I'm just sort of regurgitating that, re-envisioning that, and I'd like to carve in the clay and to draw on the clay. So that's pretty much a big influence of mine. Do I sound really nervous to you folks?
Oh, you don't. You sound totally.
Oh, good.
totally
Because I
okay.
feel
great.
like I'm shaking inside. So I
No.
shake. Okay, good.
No, I feel like this has been like, I think it's really nice to see everybody's faces, first of all. Like, that's kind of lovely and something that we take for granted now, and
Yeah.
or not anymore, rather. And you sound lovely, and I think it's great that we're all here.
Lynn, I want to ask you a question from the Wayback Machine.
The way back.
The
Okay.
Wayback Machine. When you were a book rep for the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance, which I'm a member of. Tell me about that.
Yes. Well, that's way back. That was about 35 years ago.
Yeah.
I taught school in Maine for 1 year after I graduated from college in Lewiston, of all places, and I absolutely hated it. On the very last day of my contract, I moved to New York City.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
I just had to get the heck out of town, and it was like, so I moved to New York City, and my first job that I landed was in publishing, a magazine publisher. And then I spent about 6 years in publishing. And then when I had enough of New York and moved back to Maine, I was fortunate enough to get a position with the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. And they had just received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. And the grant was for a book rep. So
One book rep?
One book rep.
That was you, huh?
Yeah. I got to put together their catalog, and then I got to go on the road and promote and sell all the Maine published books and Maine writers. I got to remember Carolyn Shute from
Sure.
Beans of Egypt, Maine. Well, her book was really big back then.
She's still writing.
She is.
Yeah.
And I got to spend some time with her.
Wow.
Got to spend some time traveling to all the little bookstores when there were lots of bookstores.
Big book? What was the name of her big book?
Beans of Egypt, Maine.
The Beans of Egypt, Maine. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That was a rough group.
Was a rough group, but it was, everybody needs a voice, and that.
Yep.
That population needed a voice, and it was kind of interesting that they sort of had their own language, their own dialect. It was it was very good. So anyway, the Maine Writers and Publishers, the position only lasted a year, which is unfortunate. And publishers, they don't have a lot of money, so unfortunately, they don't have a book rep anymore.
Yeah, I know.
But that was a lot of fun.
I'm still a member, and it's a great organization, and it spends a lot of its time now doing training for writers.
Yes.
Seminars and online training for writers, and also programs for what are now called independent publishers. It used to be called self-publishers, but independent publishers now. And it's a great group.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I really learned a lot in New York about publishing, and I always thought, it'd be great to get back into publishing somehow, but I have too many irons in the fire at the moment.
My journey like that was out of college when I graduated in 1971. I moved just about the time you did too, John. I think I moved here and spent 3 years rebuilding a big schooner and doing stuff like that. And then I woke up in the middle of the night in like the 4th year and said, I don't have any money, and there's no prospect of me having any money in the foreseeable future. So we got into our little car and drove to New York City, and so different from today. Like a month later, we both had paying jobs, and we could afford to rent an apartment, not have a car, but we could afford to rent an apartment, and we were off on the publishing career. And
Yep.
that felt very natural and just the way it ought to be. And I don't think that's true anymore.
Well, my career in publishing, I thought I was living pretty high on the hog in terms of salary, but in living in Manhattan, you were always rent poor.
Yeah.
So I had several different jobs on the weekend. One was being a pottery apprentice in order to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. How was that?
What, being an apprentice?
Yeah, like and doing, as opposed to being in, how is that whole experience?
Well, it's a great way to learn. You don't get paid very well, if at all. I apprenticed to two different commercial potters. One who did a porcelain dinnerware line for Bloomingdale's, and I used to throw their teacup in the saucer. But I only got paid for the that first quality. I was like in 400 teacups until before I got a first.
The first was the only really saleable one. The other were,
well, according to him, I sold all the but Bloomingdale's, they have pretty high standards.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of fun. I learned. It's like learning on the job, and it's a great way to learn because you're an apprentice, and you get to be around a master potter and watch. That's how we all learn, is through watching and then trying and then failing and then trying again. Isn't that right, Deborah? She's here.
Where's Deborah?
Oh, she's having some technical difficulties. I'm just texting her at the moment.
Yeah. So I think it's a great way to learn. Like if anybody wanted to pick up a trade or a vocation, or like with boat building, isn't it true, John? With boat building, isn't it more or less an apprenticeship model?
It absolutely is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have apprenticeships at the wooden boat?
Well, I mean, it's different, because it's really, the wooden boat school is like an annual apprenticeship, for a week, which is nothing in terms of skill development. But on the job, those who are working with older boat builders, more experienced boat builders, are serving the equivalent of apprenticeship for years if they're smart, because there's nothing like it. You can't really learn it. I mean, I've had the experience of thinking I knew what I was doing as a boat builder and discovering that I didn't know enough. And so, I mean, it's easy to assume that, you when you have the basics, you know enough, but the refining of the work is that's where the sophistication of it all is. And it takes years and years really to develop that skill sufficiently. I think of European apprenticeships, and they're 6, 8, 10 years. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And that's how it should be here. But but we're also anxious to get into it fast. Like, I can put me in, coach, I'll do this. I'll take care of this. And so anyway.
I had a Polish boat for a while, and as I progressively took it apart because it needed it, I would find signatures inside the boat, various Polish boat builders who had worked on it, and they would sign their name, and then it would say apprentice after that. And I thought that was really nice. So all kinds of places all over the boat, they'd sign their name before they put the piece of wood to bed.
Wow.
I thought that was a good testament for their dedication to it.
Yeah, the pride that you can feel if you really want to immerse yourself in it. I mean, it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the apprentice shop. I mean, they base their whole curriculum on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn, have you ever had an apprentice? I wasn't sure.
No, I haven't. Hannah, that's not a bad idea.
Mhm.
Right now during the pandemic, I do have one person working in the studio with me, but it's sort of like in a tight little bubble type situation. We have our own little bubble. But as soon as the vaccine is widespread and
Oh, God saves, yeah.
things calm down. But I think it would be nice to even have an apprenticeship class. My second apprenticeship was up on West 72nd Street, called a place called Claycrafts, and there were 10 of us in the apprenticeship class, and that was really quite amazing. We threw their Claycrafts dinnerware line, but we also were responsible to teach a class, either a pottery class to kids or adults, and so it was like generative, teaching this person the skill, and the business management, but also how to teach it. So I always liked that model. And those people, and a couple of those people that were that I was an apprentice with back then are still lifelong friends.
Is there something about the clay around here that makes good potter's clay? Because we do have potteries that have been going on for ages and ages, and a long history of pottery.
That's true. There's a long history of brick making here.
Yeah, there is too, yeah.
Peninsula because of the large clay deposits.
Are they related, or is brick clay related to potter's clay?
Yes, well, actually, Ratcliffe Pottery
Sure.
over in Blue Hill.
Yeah.
Denny Ratcliffe digs his own clay from a clay pit on his farm, or his father's farmland, or I'm not sure exactly whose farmland, but that clay body, he digs and processes it, and it's extremely pliable and pure. And all he adds to that clay body to produce his pottery is water. He sieves it, and it's a really nice clay body. It's a rich, dark red terracotta. It's earthenware. It's a low fire clay, and that's the same type of clay you make brick out of. It's a low fire. Now, I believe that a lot of the steamships that came up the coast back in the early 1900s loaded up local brick here from the peninsula and brought it back to Boston. They used the brick as ballast on their trips.
I think it was often used as ballast.
Yeah, which I find really interesting. And I guess there are a couple of places at low tide over in Sedgwick where you can see the remnants of lots of old bricks.
Penobscot too, yeah.
Oh, and Penobscot? I haven't seen those yet. I'm gonna go look for it.
It appears up out of the low tide flats. And you think, oh God, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm currently collecting, the granite down on Nascaig Point. There's a lot of beautiful pink granite, that Blue Hill granite. I've investigated, and I have yet to complete the process because I need to get some equipment. But you can make glazes out of granite. Granite's a feldspar, and you can process the feldspar and make a glaze from it. So I'm hoping to make a glaze from the Blue Hill granite over here. If you see me collecting rock. I'm sorry?
What do you think it might look like, the glaze from the Blue Hill granite?
I would think that it would be sort of a transparent, but with a pinkish hue. I've made some glazes out of, remember Mount St. Helen, when Mount St. Helen erupted?
I do indeed, I was right there.
Oh, you were? Good.
Oh, yeah.
This is long before you were born, Hanna.
Oh, good.
So you probably weren't there. Or
I've heard of it. So
so I've got a friend to send me sacks of the ash from Mount St. Helen, and I've made some glaze out of that, which came out quite pink, which was a surprise, considering the ash was white.
Yeah, it's very rough. That stuff came out of St. Helens, isn't it? To the hand, it feels like grit, kind of, as I recall.
Yeah, it's a pumice, I guess.
The pumice, yeah.
Oh, the pumice, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so it's pretty interesting. I wish I had gone into geology or I had some background in geology, but
Yeah.
you know,
Ooh,
my
awesome.
mother said, "Be a teacher, Lynn. Be a teacher."
You got a regular paycheck.
That's right. Yeah. So that's pretty much my story. What about who else is on here? Anybody else on here that's interested in pottery? I know Deborah.
Deborah, I saw you.
There's
Hi.
Deborah. How are you, Deborah?
I'm good. It took me a while to figure it out and major operations had to happen. So now I'm an expert on computers. We don't need pottery anymore.
Oh, good.
Oh, do you think, no, I was just wondering, I didn't know if I had to do something in order to talk, but do you think that the reason why pink granite, there it is.
Nice.
There it is.
Do you think that could be iron that causes that pinkness, or aluminum or copper? Do you know what? Because I know iron can go green or red and copper goes nicely red. So what do you think?
It could be a little bit of both. I'm not sure, to be honest
Dr.
with you.
Blossom, she had to take geology in
She did.
college.
Oh,
She
good.
did.
Well, I will talk to Blossom because it would be interesting to actually, see the chemical breakdown of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
What
I
kinds of
I think it's really cool. I love rocks. I mean, when you think about pottery and glazes, a lot of the glazes that I know I'm attracted to are very earthy colors. And that's all glaze is a mixture of minerals.
So how do you
and
make a glaze?
How do you make it?
Mhm.
Well, there are several different ways. You can go and buy it, or you can study up. There are lots of good books. I'm kind of self-taught with the glaze making. There are lots of free recipes out there, base recipes, and then so you mix up your base, and it's typically made with feldspar and silica, maybe some zinc oxide. Right now I'm working with glazes made with lithium carbonate, and lithium's gotten very expensive because it's being used in batteries for electric
Oh gosh, yeah.
cars and things. So I think I'm going to have to move out of the lithium carbonate glaze area. But so you weigh it out. Back in the day, we used to use a triple gram, those triple beam scales to weigh out your measurements. But now, anybody can get one of those little digital scales. You weigh it out, you dry mix it, and then you pour the dry into water, and you let it. It's called the slagging method. You let the dry minerals absorb the water, then you sieve it several times, and voila, you have a glaze.
Okay.
But there's a lot of testing that goes on too. Does it fit the clay body correctly? Does it work with other glazes? There's a lot of failure.
Okay.
A lot of failure involved. But so it's well worth testing, on little pieces versus sometimes I'm pretty impulsive and I'll mix up a new glaze and go, oh yeah, this is going to be great, without testing it. And then it comes out really terrible. So I've got a whole graveyard, a whole cemetery of bad pots. So, but anyway,
Lynn, you might be able to get lithium carbonate by prescription. It's
Yes.
prescribed for bipolar disorder.
Yes, I hear it's really good for that and schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So,
Not so much for schizophrenia,
No.
bipolar
oh, really?
Bipolar,
disorders.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you
It
could
might
be
be
The nice thing about having all those pots that don't turn out so great is you can just fling them somewhere and they break and you feel so much better.
Or just take a hammer to it,
Oh,
good.
Very
not
therapeutic.
so much fun at all.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
I was just wondering, do you have a preference for, low fire glazes or high fire or?
Well, because of the nature of the kilns necessary. I did do a lot of work with low fire with an electric kiln,
Mhm.
and then I moved up to a sort of a mid-range range, and it's called Cone 6.
Mhm.
It's fired up to about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit for the clay to mature. When I lived in the city, I did do a lot of high fire gas porcelain work. But one has to have access to a gas kiln,
Right.
and those aren't easily portable. So right now I'm doing Cone 6 glazes. Someday I'd like to build a wood kiln and maybe do some firing with wood, which would be pretty nice. There are a lot of potters in this area. Brooklyn's full of potters.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely place to be if you're a potter, because there's always somebody you can talk to about glazes and pottery. And we're going to be doing some firing over at Odette's. And she has a salt kiln, so we're going to try that. And raku, before the pandemic hit, I had a raku firing workshop all planned, but we'll have to wait. Maybe this summer we'll do a raku firing, which is kind of cool.
What's nice about a wood kiln, a firing can be a community project.
Definitely.
Oh,
It
nice.
takes,
I think that's the thrilling part of it.
have you tried that? A
Just
wood firing?
Just twice, the kind of things you remember over time, you know.
Yeah, I have yet to try that, but I know that Haystack does community wood firing, so that might be an option for me to first try it. Anyway, it's interesting. I love anything that has to do with building community. So wood firing would be a great way to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Phew, I'm going to have a drink now, okay?
Oh, please.
I was thinking about, so much of us are living in, so many of us living in a moment of uncertainty, and I think about the uncertainty and the experimentation in ceramics. When I am close to people who are making work, they're always surprised by the outcome, right? There's so much uncertainty with the glaze and how it comes out. So do you have any reflections about that, or stories about, and how do you feel about that part of the process? It feels so different than so many other ways of making work, where you can shape something and imagine the outcome pretty specifically. And then in ceramics, I think surprise and uncertainty is part of the game, right?
It certainly is. It's you have to be very resilient, because you're never assured of the outcome. Even if you think this is a sure bet, something might go wrong with either the firing or the glaze, or the glaze might have been applied too thick and might run off. So I've learned just to let it go. I don't become emotionally attached.
I heard a Japanese word fairly recently for the benefits of random action in pottery, that it comes out different, better, or worse than you expected. And the message obviously was that's a lot like life. Have you ever heard that word? Queen,
No.
Queen, you tell me that word.
Are you talking about wabi sabi?
That's it.
Wabi sabi. Oh, okay. I have never heard that. I've got to write that down. Wabi sabi. No kidding. So it's sort of a term for letting things flow through you without attachment. Is that what that means? Wabi sabi.
Think like the Grateful Dead. Yeah.
Okay. Wabi sabi.
About allowing, that's good, allowing the natural processes and whatever happens within in the kiln. If one side sags a little bit, then that is beautiful because that is just how it happened naturally. And so appreciating that sort of nature.
Ah, well, that's great. Well, thanks for that. That's pretty much the state of affairs when it comes to my experiences, because if you get personally attached or emotionally attached to some of your work, and then especially, oh, I hate to tell you how many times somebody will order something from me, and and it's, I put 3 weeks of time into a piece, and then lo and behold, it fails in the kiln, and you just want to scream. And it's like, well, so I've had enough of those experiences. So now what I do is if there's some sort of order for, like, for instance, a platter, someone just ordered a platter from me. Instead of just making 1, I make 3. So 1 is bound to be at least halfway successful, but you just can't get attached. I do get attached to finished work. If something comes out pretty well, and I'll have a little love affair with it. I'll be totally enamored by it until I either sell it or give it away. And that's kind of, sometimes I make lamps, and my first lamp that came out really, really well, and I cried after somebody bought it because it was a piece of me. You know what I mean? It's I bet you feel that way, being a painter, Sherry and Deborah, you just become so attached to something.
They're almost like little children in a way, a little bit of a way. And so you're always happy when somebody, when it goes to a good home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
yeah.
You're grateful.
And you got to know where it's going. So like you can picture it. Like I can picture, is that Penny Persson? Yes, I can picture, like, Penny Persson bought a tray of mine, and I thought, oh, it's going to Penny's house. I can just imagine it being there, and you're like Sherry says, you want it to go to a good home.
Yeah, and you don't always know where it's going, but it's really cool when you do. And it's, so you can sort of visit it later too.
Yeah.
I love the tray, and I can visualize it even though I'm in Vermont at the moment.
Oh, okay. I'll visualize it over here then. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just wondering if there's snow there in Vermont, Penny, and you can ski.
I actually skied today for the first time this year. Not a lot of snow, but the good thing is I'm getting a COVID vaccine tomorrow.
Oh, hooray. Good for you.
Which is why I'm here, so.
How are you doing that? Are you first?
Yeah, you're only 40.
Come on.
What the hell?
She's lying about her age.
The state of Vermont loves, the ski industry is very important to the economy in Vermont. So all emergency medical responders in the state are being vaccinated, and I'm a ski patroller.
Good.
So I'm very lucky.
Is there any time for me to become on the ski patrol there? I'll be right up. Okay.
Lynn, I had a quick question. I know we talked about the local clay in Blue Hill, but is that your preference? Is that what you like to use?
No, I found the local clay. I worked with it for quite some time. When I first moved here a couple of years ago, I worked with Denny Ratcliffe at his place for a little bit before I found the studio over here in Brooklyn. But it's I much prefer working with a lighter color clay. So right now I'm working with it's almost a white, but it's a light buff color stoneware. And I'll change. I've been working in that for about 2 years, and I'm ready to go to get some color. Maybe go to a dark chocolate type of clay. I like to carve a lot in the clay, so the dark chocolate seems very rich, like a rich surface to carve into. So I might be switching soon. The clay that I use is commercially made from a company called Laguna, and they had a lot of problems because of the pandemic, and so it was hard to get clay. So I've been using a lot of my own old recycled clays. So which was good for me because I got to clean up the studio because the last thing I want to do is to recycle clay. It's a lot of work. But
well, I'd be really interested to see a piece made of local clay and then glazed with the local granite glaze. That would be really neat. Something that has never existed outside of Blue Hill.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sorry, are you Queenie's daughter? Yes, I can tell now. Well, I do have some local clay at the studio. The only issue is with the locally made glaze. You see, in order to process that granite, when you have to, first of all, you put the granite in the kiln and you fire it up to about 2000 degrees so that it vitrifies. The silica in the rock itself will turn to glass, more or less. And then it kind of shrinks a little. It looks kind of funny, but then you have to grind it. And that's most difficult to break that down. So what I need to find is it's some sort of like a rock mill. There's a guy over in Stew Bend who has one. And if I can get enough granite together, he'll mill it for me. And then I'll call you up and you can come over and make something, okay? Out of local clay and but don't hold your breath right now. Maybe by the summer it might be we might be able to do that.
Okay, I have nothing but time, so.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Made fairy summer.
So I have a follow-up question to Ferry's question and comments. It is fascinating to think about the local potential. And I can remember the postmaster here, Celia Laughlin, who was postmaster here for decades in the 70s and 80s anyway. And her husband was a potter. And they were here, as I recall, I had never met him, but they were here because of the clay here. Not the Blue Hill clay, but the clay here in Brooklyn.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So, I've certainly gotten mired down in that gray marine clay that we might find sometimes up at the head of coves that are pretty muddy on the surface. Are you aware of saltwater clay, marine clay that has potential for that? Because it's a fascinating prospect to me.
I really am not aware, but I'm going to write myself a note to look into that. So I'm not sure if there's any a body of study on marine clay. I know there is on clay that you find on the land through in pits and whatnot. I have harvested clay out of riverbeds, like out of the Saco River. It was a green clay. It was really disgusting, but it would be interesting to run a test on something like that.
Yeah.
It's the whole process of making, say, a clay that you gathered, say, off the shore or out of a pit or a riverbed is it's pretty laborious. But once you've got a little bit of a setup and a system, you can refine it, because there's a lot mixed into that clay that needs to be removed in order to form it. And sometimes you have to augment the clay with other minerals to make it plastic. Most of the time, natural clay is very short, so it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. And when it's fired, it's very crumbly and it shrinks a lot. But I'll have to look into that marine clay. I've got it on my list next to wabi sabi.
When they dredge the Blue Hill Bay, will that be the source of any clay that can be used?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a lot of clay down there.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, along with a lot of other stuff. But yeah, I bet there's and I have to also write down lithium. What was that medication? Lithium for
Escalith, lithium carbonate.
Lithium
LiCO2.
Right. It might be cheaper as medication than it is as a raw material.
It could be. They have the, it's generic. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's a generic. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Currently, lithium carbonate is about $80 a pound.
Wow.
So I wonder what it is per prescription. But anyway, that was interesting. But the marine clay, that's something to look into.
You know, we're on a cove, Wells Cove, that empties out, you know, with the tides. And I don't know if cove clay is of any interest, but you know, it's there every 6 hours. And
Yeah.
it's kind of wonderful, you know, to muck through it, but I can't imagine what it would be like to try to harvest it, but we could try.
Well, yeah, it would be a good project, especially if I had some apprentices.
There you go.
And I think I showed you the little mug that Blossom's ceramics teacher in high school made with. She made the engobe from clay from Idaho. It's quite beautiful. It's a beautiful dark sort of coffee colored. It would be a glaze if it would fire right, but it's an engobe. It's sort of a
which is like a slip. Yeah. Yeah, that was a beautiful mug. I do remember that.
Very beautiful color. And sometimes isn't it nice also to have like wild clay like that? It has a lot of organic material in it, which will make it more plastic. I mean, that's what the Japanese potters really strove for, that plasticity, didn't they?
Well, they did, but if it has too much of it, it's not a reliable kind of clay body.
It could explode,
yeah. And that happens.
Lynn?
Yes.
I want to tell you that Caroline Mayer has used the clay from the cove right by her house. And made directly from that clay right there.
Yeah, I think she makes an engobe with it, like we were just talking about. So
no, it's a whole. Well, it's a whole, and I have several pots by her from just that clay.
Oh, cool.
Oh, nice.
So you could talk to her about that.
I'll have to actually have a discussion with her about that.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And another thing about that clay, because it's all over here. It's all as you walk, especially low tide, after right after the tide goes out, and it's still pretty wet. And my feet have sunk into the clay.
Yeah.
And one time after, especially high tide, I was walking with a friend, and it went right down to my ankles. Up to my ankles. So it was very wet and very gooey. So we just took some and put it on our faces.
There you go.
And we made clay masks.
There you go.
And, walked around and we hoped we wouldn't bump into anybody that we knew. But there's really plenty of clay all along these shores.
Oh, right. Well, that's excellent. I'll definitely talk to Carolyn, and I think that would be worth something to go along with the Blue Hill granite from the point.
Yeah.
Lynn,
Yeah,
where is your studio?
My studio's over at the old Brooklyn schoolhouse.
Okay, yeah.
On the second floor, and it's Sherry Streeter's old studio. And I've been there for 2 years now. Going on my 3rd year. Just today's my anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I've been here for 2 years, and I plan on being here for another 20 or so.
Good.
So you'll have to come to a Pottergenarian's pottery session this summer. It's like an open studio. I don't ask to see birth certificates. So if, I price it so that people who are on Social Security can come. I've made some pretty good friends from some of the senior citizens, like from Deer Isle, like Lorraine Knowlton. She's in her 90s and she was a regular Pottergenarian, and it's a nice mix of people. You get a lot of summer people, you get just lifetime islanders here, and it's a really nice mix. Made a couple of really good friends that way, and a lot of good conversation, provided we don't talk politics.
There is that.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, so with the studio and with, COVID and everything, like what are you doing and how is it working and what are you working on?
Well, the whole virus thing really put threw a wrench into giving class. So I was a little hard pressed there for a few months because, you have to pay the rent on the studio. So I decided to do the farmer's market. So I braved and started doing the farmer's market and started producing things that I thought people would want to buy at a farmer's market, like bowls and trays and things like that. And I did pretty well at the farmer's market in Brooklyn. And then so I branched out to Blue Hill. And so I haven't made a living, but I'm still here. And then I started making lamps, and I've been doing really well. I got into a gallery in Rockland, Archipelago, the Island Institute.
Oh yeah.
And so I've been doing really well with my lamps, and also here with Gigi with the Handmade Papers Gallery. So that's what's been keeping me afloat. Is I had to switch from being a community pottery offering classes to actually producing. And I've been selling on the internet. That takes a lot of time and energy, promoting, and I don't know. It's a whole new area for me. I'd rather just go to the farmer's market. It's like you're a peddler, just like the old time potters. And that's how I see myself. I'm a peddler. And so anyway, that's pretty much it. I started doing videos and providing kits, but that is way too much work. So hopefully, this virus will end soon and we can get back to some sort of normal, and I can have class again. Anyway, it's been a good trip. I can't ask for a better community to be part of. I really enjoy it here, and I'm from my last place of residency was Western Maine, and I was there for about 25 years, and I much prefer living here. The coast is beautiful and the community is beautiful, and if you're not a churchgoer, like in Western Maine, I didn't really know. I didn't have much of a community because I'm not a churchgoer, and they're very church-centered. But so this is great. I created my own place here, basically my own spot within the community, and it's really important. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here. And anybody have any other questions, comments?
I hope anybody in this group and who knows other people will recommend other people to talk to and recommend this to other people who want to hear about. We got lots of other things to talk about in arts and letters and music and painting. And I'm really looking forward to it. I would end on one small up note, which is that in my business, my book business, 2019 was like the best year I've ever had by far.
Wow.
Just signed up book after book after book and went into 2020 and they all quit. They all just said, no effing way am I ever writing that book. I give up. And so 2020 was just like terrible. And nothing was happening. I was sitting around my office twiddling my fingers, wondering if anything was ever going to happen. And 2021, they all get out of bed and they all start writing and they start sending me stuff. And I'm just deluged with manuscripts and great projects. And we're just going crazy and I can't handle it. I mean, I'm not used to this. So, but we have things we've been working on for a long time that are coming to fruition. We have new art books. And it's because I think the zeitgeist is that it's going to be okay. And we're going to come out the other side. So,
Yeah. Well, that's really good to hear. Yeah.
Really good.
You're here.
Yeah.
You're here. Well, I really appreciate you having me on as your first person. And I look forward to being part of many more. Cheers.
Cheers. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Lynn.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Hannah.
Hi,
I don't know how to
Queenie.
turn it off.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.